What's up, Rockstars? Today I have the pleasure of reviewing Mythic Battles Ragnarok for you. Now, this is from Monolith. This is their latest Kickstarter. This is the new hotness right here. They did Mythic Battles Pantheon, which was the Greek version. They did a Mythic Battles Pantheon 1.5. And now they're doing Ragnarok, which is the Norse version of the game. It's a standalone kind of expansion, right? Or I guess really it's a whole new game, but it can be used in tandem with Pantheon as well. I'll be talking about all of that and more coming up right now. Alright, now just a general disclaimer, this is a prototype, which means nothing is final here. Everything could theoretically change. That being said, it's a very far along prototype, so I'm not too concerned there. It has like almost a complete full rulebook, for instance. These are resin miniatures, though Mythic Battles Pantheon's known for having fantastic miniatures, and so I would expect nothing less from these. In fact, they might actually improve a little bit as they work on maybe some basing or something like that, or just fine-tuning how the miniatures fit together and whatnot. But anyway, like the board, like don't judge, the art's probably pretty close, but it's like the shiny kind of poster board kind of stuff, and these are not as, none of the card stocks is good or anything like that. So just bear that in mind. Things could change, and obviously what you see physically will be a little bit different in the mass production version. And of course rules could change or whatever as well, but we'll talk about how far along everything is and kind of go on that. Additionally, and this is just actually a free shout out, but I love these shirts. This is from Into the AM. There's a link down below. I'll go on and throw that in there for them, just because I love wearing these. They're so soft. I've washed this like, I don't know how many times, and it still looks brand freaking new. It's amazing, actually. So really good, cool, cheap shirts down there. Again, link in the description below to that. They're not sponsored or anything like that. I just really like their stuff. This is actually pretty much a complete set, and I'm going to, so I wasn't able to review Pantheon. I just never got around to it. I didn't do reviews as much as I do now. I still struggle to do a lot of reviews because I do a lot of, I've played this game at 2, 3, 4 player. I've played every single map. I've played it with Pantheon, without Pantheon. I've put this through its paces already. So I like to get a lot of game time in, because as you saw from the length of this review, I like to do some detailed reviews. So bear that in mind. I'm kind of taking some of Pantheon in here. Like I'm reviewing like basic mechanics, but also this might be your entry. You can buy Ragnarok and not have Pantheon at all, and that's totally fine. It's perfectly playable. Trust me. That's the majority of what I played here was just Ragnarok alone. I tried it with Pantheon, but for the most part, it was in just this core box experience, no stretch goals or anything like that. So I'm going to keep hitting these minis. So suffice it to say, I'm going to be covering some core mechanics as well. Okay. So it's not just like, what is this new? That being said, let's go ahead and talk about that right after kind of what's the same. So the same stuff is still great. You're still activating your, miniatures from their cards. They still have a certain amount that you can use based off their strategic value, whether it's 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, even on some of these. Where you kind of draw the card and then you activate them with that. And then you can do 1 or 2 things, whether it's 2 simple things or 1 complex thing. You're having all those decision points. You still have your, like runes is the divinity stones here instead of Umphalos. I'll talk about why they're different, but they act kind of like an Art of War card, which this is the new Art of War card, just like art-wise. And the Art of War card is kind of your wild card, your Joker, right? Your, one-eyed Jack, I don't know, whatever it is. Where you can use this to do different things. You can draw some cards. You can look for a specific card. You can evade away from somebody. You can do it to activate special abilities, or just activate a second unit. So if you want to do 2 units in one, you can pay that plus that unit's card and then activate 2 units. All of that goodness is still here, and it's still fresh, and it's still exciting. I've played a lot of Pantheon, way more than I have of even Ragnarok at this point, just because I've played a lot of Pantheon, like quite a bit. It's up there on my most played games. It's not like something crazy, but it's definitely pretty darn, like I've played it a lot. I love most skirmish army building games anyway. So like it's still really, really good. The core, just as good. So if you're coming from Pantheon, it's great. If you haven't played that and any of that sounds exciting, it's good. It's really, really good. The core of this game is good. That's just a blanket statement before any of the rest of this review. Okay? It's just, this is a really fun game. Now, with that in mind, there's still a whole lot of new stuff too. There's in fact a lot of new stuff, and a lot of it's really good. Obviously, all of the units are new, right? But there is some new mechanics as well. So, for instance, I mentioned these divinity stones, what they're calling them now. They were umphalos. I'm probably saying that wrong. In the Greek version, you could take one, and the card acted as an Art of War card, but you could also heal with it, right? Which was actually quite good. The rune Divinity Stone is a little bit different. It does not heal you. Instead, you can also discard it out of the game where you don't have it anymore to increase your offensive value. So you're rolling an extra die, and you can stack that up. And you can do that on that's just, it's really good, especially if a few of those, you can make something dead, essentially, is what that allows you to do. And I think it thematically kind of makes sense, right? So the Greeks are kind of healing as they're getting stronger, and then the Norse is just more like, ferocious and, rage and aggressive and all that kind of stuff. And so they're very much I get stronger when I use this, and I'm gonna soak it up and then unleash on it. And so that's, I think, quite fitting. I like the healing more personally, but that's just because I think with the healing, it's a known quantity, whereas with the extra offense, it's not like a guaranteed hit, right? I could still miss on it, and trust me, I roll bad, so there's that. But it's cool, it's different. In the Pantheon version, you could have climb to get up on rocks, but that was really kind of it, and you could just kind of go up there and, snipe away and get that extra range and offense and all that stuff. Now for a complex action, anybody can use the Ascend version where you can actually then go up there. Now it's a complex action, so all you're doing is getting up there, but any unit can get up there, whether to get the defense, or whether to get the bonus up there, or just to attack the person up there. Whatever you want to do. Either way, you can now ascend with any unit up there, which is quite nice. There's more. So you have these, troops, right? We always have the troops. And now they also have troop attachments. So troops are 1 recruitment point. Attachments are an extra recruitment point. So now you have 2, but they can get some great combinations. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but essentially any troop can now have these attachments, which is super cool. I think it's a great idea. It doesn't really add a lot of complexity to it's like an extra mechanic that's confusing or layering on more, right? It's just, here's a nice little nuance that only really affects the army building more than anything else. Obviously, when you're fighting them, it's just like another ability, essentially, or, whatever it adds up to them. So that's really cool. There are some more. For instance, there is these divinity areas, this kind of terrain here. And this is a cool one. So I'm going to go ahead and just see real quick. So the divine source, you can move in it, but you have to stop your movement as soon as you enter it. And then you roll and see what happens. If you roll blank, you get to move in extra space. Maybe that's one more. Maybe that's the one you lost when you were moving. If you roll a 1, you draw 2 cards. If you roll a 2, you get to search your deck and take 1. If you roll a 3, you get to look at the first 3 cards of your deck and then arrange them in any order on the top. If you roll a 4, you get to look at the 2 cards of the opponent's deck and arrange them in any order that you wish. And, of course, if you roll a 5, you get to choose one of those. So they're all good. Some of them are great. A lot of them are essentially a free Art of War card move. And you can do that on your way to something, or if you're going to end your movement anyway, you may as well end on there. It can't do anything bad for you, right? It's literally just good, which I think is great. I think that's really smart to be able to do that. And they're, like in this map, they're littered here, and there. So they're kind of near your area, but then also in the middle and stuff like that. And it's every time you enter it too with a unit. So you could pop back out and enter again if you wanted that. If you just want to, if all you have is, like a card that you want to activate, but then you want an Art of War card to be able to do a special ability on your next one, but then you have to activate them too, or something like that. If you could always just re-enter it. I mean, it's neat. I like it. So that's another cool addition as well. Let's see. I think the only other major one that I noticed, of course, there's probably going to be more and more as I play more and as I compare to Pantheon and just kind of do all that, is the Slayer keyword. It used to be, I think, just Monster Slayer, and now it's just Slayer, like blank Slayer. In fact, the Hell God can pick if it's a Titan Slayer or a God Slayer or a Beast Slayer or a Monster Slayer or a Troop Slayer or whatever. So you can kind of essentially pick any unit you want and do that, which is really helpful if you're going up against like a Titan and you have her, you can just pick, I'm now a Titan Slayer, right? Or anything like that. They'll have Monster Slayer on their thing, but Slayer can be any unit type. It's kind of a generic term that they can use now for anything really. Which is, of course, is a great thing to have. You get some rerolls. It's fantastic. So, those are really the main differences I noticed mechanically. Obviously each unit does unique things that are different, and we'll talk about that as well. I want to take a moment to talk about the rulebook here. So you guys saw me unbox this, and as you saw, it's like a legit rulebook. And this is not a one-to-one to Pantheon. It's not like they just took that and pasted it in here. In fact, they purposely didn't do that. It's like, it's from the ground up, but it's not, if that makes sense. It's saying the same stuff for the most part as Pantheon, but in a different order that's maybe a little bit smarter. They still have an index, which is great. The Pantheon index highlights the main one. This one does not yet. I would like them to still do that. It's one of the best indexes I've seen was in Pantheon. Essentially, like in area, you see it's on 7, 9, 13, 14, 15, 17, 19, on a ton, right? And they would highlight red. Well, here's where it talks mainly about area. Here's everything else that it's mentioned in. That highlights really, really nice. But this is like a fully fledged legit rulebook. You can take this and play the entire freaking game with it, no problem. There might be a few questions, when it comes to like, how many troops you lay down at the beginning and stuff like that, Pantheon has. They're still adding to it, work in progress, but definitely one of the best rulebooks I've had for a prototype, which makes sense as it's just an iteration on an existing one. They also do have the player aids. I just wanted to give a quick shout out on the page numbers here. They did this in Pantheon as well, and again, it's super helpful. So I can see here's talents, but if I need to really look it up, it's on page 25. Right? That's great. That's really nice to know. Or if here are the power types, but it's just a quick kind of paragraph on each one. If I need more information, page 28. Again, super helpful. The only kind of oddity I saw when going through this rule book, and a lot of this is kind of a coloration, and this can be kind of odd, but they have these like orange text, like see page 21 or whatever, which is great. A little hard to see that orange on the kind of the tan background. Just a minor thing. I'm slightly colorblind. It might be that. It might just be me. I don't know. I could see it. It's just like, I'd like the contrast a bit more there. But again, all work in progress, of course. Definitely a plus. So the rule book is nice. It's fleshed out. You can play the game. I didn't have a bajillion questions, with for them. In fact, my main one was just, okay, how do I integrate this into Pantheon? Because that section wasn't really in here yet. And I wanted to make sure I did things correctly, or at least made right assumptions on things. So that's that. Okay, next, I'm going to talk about the units and army building a little bit. So, first of all, these units are incredibly unique, which amazes me because I have everything from Pantheon, minus, I think, like the Conan crossover and stuff like that, but everything in Pantheon. And there are a ton of units. If I stacked them, they'd be this high of these. I mean, this is a ton of units to pick from. And each one's unique, and these continue to be unique. For instance, there's this chick here, Gulaveg or whatever. She actually gets, as you can kind of see, so, as you get damaged, your stats change. But one thing you'll notice is her defense goes up, right? So she starts at 7 and ends at 9. She's about as tough as a god to hurt towards the end. Other things, like she's not doing as much damage and she's not moving as much and whatnot, but it's really cool to see that there's a unit that literally just gets tougher the more they get hurt, which is really cool. There's another chicken here. I guess I can find her real quick, but essentially, so she, yeah, right here. So, Brunhold or whatever, what she does is she gets weaker, but then at the very end, she gets stronger again. So at the very end, she gets a push back up. In fact, her offensive value goes up as well. And this is just stats that I'm talking about here, right? It's just really cool that like she starts to get weak, but then she has that kind of second wind, right? She has that second bit where at the very end, she's hitting harder and is tougher. Not as tough as Gulavik here, but she's hitting harder too. So it's just really cool to see that kind of, I guess, progression happen just on the stats. But it goes more than that. You have she has corruption, where she can literally take a destroyed troop unit and take it from the enemy, and now they're yours. That's huge. That's massive. It's pretty much the main reason why she's a 5 cost. That is insane that you can just take somebody's unit. Now, it doesn't look like it'll work against god-specific units. Some gods come with troops. Those you can't. But anything else, any of these troops here, if you were fighting against them and you destroy them, you use her thing. Guess what? Now I take it. She can also give a token to somebody, and it makes it to where they can't do maneuvers. So their Art of War cards are now just second activations. Like that sucks. Like that's, if you know that they want to do a troop recall anyway, right? Or anything like that, you can deny them all this kind of stuff by, essentially making their Art of War cards more or less paperweights, right? And again, really, really strong there. But there are so many unique ones. So the Beowulf here, I know there was some debate on here on the Facebook group or whatever, but I actually really like him. He has Hrunting or whatever. I'm probably saying that wrong, but essentially with one Art of War card, he can just do straight 2 damage to somebody. Now, when you're going against somebody like her where she gets a 9 defense at the very end, you could waste 2 attacks with Fenrir and hope to get those 2, right? Which is fine, but that's not really good use of him, right? You don't want to use him to do 2 wounds to some chick, right? But you can just waltz up with Beowulf and just snipe it right out, and then she's dead. Just straight up. You could kill a god instantly and having a known quantity. Again, I talked about that with the Unfolos cards. It's huge in this game because you are rolling dice. I'll talk about the mitigation manipulation a little bit later. But knowing that you're about to just knock 2 wounds off of it is great. I've used them before just to bracket somebody, where essentially their stats lower, right? So if I was going to attack and I wanted to lower their defense, if he's doing 2 damage anyway, I can do that, lower their defense, and I'm rolling against a 7 instead of an 8 or a 6 instead of a 7 or whatever it might be. Again, super helpful there. There's a lot of really cool people like that. Thor over here, he can with, Art of War card, just snipe anybody, anywhere. He can just call down lightning, boom, and attack anybody from the start. He doesn't have to move. In fact, I've played against him where he didn't move the entire game. He just sat there and just lightninged people to death. Very, very cool. There's a lot of them. You have Loki who's teleporting around, essentially has a not me mechanic where he can be like, no, you're attacking them. No, I'm teleporting over there. You're attacking them now. They're over there now, right? Very cool mechanics. This guy here, for 2 Art of War cards, he can drink some dragon's blood where he just doesn't die. He comes back with 3 health. And you can do that as many times as you wish. So as long as you can pay for it, that dude's not dying. And, again, super cool. It means he can just go up against the god. You don't care. You got 2 Art of War cards? Go ahead, kill him. You think he'll kill him. You're not going to. Bam, he's still alive. He's still in your face. Very, very cool stuff like that. A lot of neat mechanics. Just really, really cool in general. Now, I will say this is kind of the selection of the core box with no stretch goals. I guarantee within the first day, you guys are going to have like a bajillion stretch goals. Like, it's not a problem, right? For instance, I've not seen Odin. I'm assuming he's going to show up, right? Okay, so with that in mind, the core box of what I got lacks a few things. There are no flyers. There's a little bit of range, like he can kind of, snipe, and there's a little bit of there's only 1 troop unit with some range. Range is something that there's like 3 or 4 units maybe that have range. It's not a whole lot. And so a lot of it's just kind of slow moving melee. In this core box, just this set, of course, again, things can change, but for the most part, you get 0 in range for most people here. And like no flying, right? So there's some gaps that's a little bit simpler in that sense, at least, in that there's just not as much selection. But again, I'm assuming that's going to change. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention is this Jotun guy here. So he only costs 2, which is pretty cool. He has Scout, which means he starts on the board like a troop. You don't have to waste a card to deploy him. And what's great is he has a horde mechanic. So if he dies, you can just discard an Art of War card and bring him back. And he just comes back from the deployment zone, and they just keep coming, right? There's a whole bunch of ice giants here, apparently. Very, very cool that he can do that for a 2 cost, where you don't care if he dies because he just pops right back. Any kind of 2 cost monster that's as strong as a troop, essentially, pretty darn cool in my book. So, a lot of unique units here. That being said, and I keep saying that, right? And I could talk over and over again about their 3 units or abilities, and his 2, because he also has Icy Touch. And then, of course, his 2, because he also have Niangling or whatever, where he can change assault dice, or, all these other units here, all of these here. And really, I guess the main point of all of this is recruiting can take a while. If you have everything. So we did a game where we had all of Pantheon and all of Ragnarok, and it was glorious to be able to build a unit there. I'll talk about that in just a moment there, but kind of what army I built out of that, just kind of playing around. But it can take a while to read all of these, and him and haw about the strategic value of this guy's more, and he has more activation, but he costs more. And I don't really like his second ability, so he only has 1 good ability that I like, or It all depends, but there are so much that it can take a while. Typically, unless you really know the units and you've been playing a long time, you want to limit it. In other words, if you go to this Kickstarter and you back everything and you're like, I just want it all. I want this. This game sounds amazing. King of Average loves it. Spoiler alert. And, I want it all. You can do that and that's great. And you're going to have a wonderful time with it. Baby steps. Start with just a core box. Maybe not even the stretch goals. Maybe just this. And then after 1 or 2 games of this, then add the stretch goals. And maybe add some expansions. And then maybe add Pantheon. But just a core box. And then it gets a lot. Like I said, you can get a stack like this of units. And it's a lot to read. It's a lot to go over. And you don't want to mess it up. So there can definitely be some slowness in the setup of it, really in the army building portion of it. It's kind of like if you were to get a whole cube of magic cards and then have to read all the cards and make your own that way instead of drafting out of it. And which you can draft if you want, but I like building an army and stuff like that. So, that I'll take the time. Okay, 2 more things about the units in this game. First of all, I have played with Pantheon as well, and I must say I found them very balanced. They fit right in. You would, if you didn't have the knowledge of where each one came from, you literally you wouldn't know. They fit right in with the Pantheon. Obviously, the theme's a little different, right? But it's a little bit more violent, a little bit more, aggressive perhaps, but, you can intermix them. You could do Ragnarok versus Pantheon. It all works just fine. Like, just fine. I had no issues whatsoever with any weird rules or any awkward situations. That doesn't mean, there's a lot of units. You might be able to get into an awkward situation, but I'm sure they'll rule that. And Pantheon, you could do that just with Pantheon, and they were good at, establishing rules that were kind of official rules that you can look up if you need to. But no, seriously, like you can intermix or you can do a versus, works just fine. Just fine. All the gods can take, like, a Greek god could take a rune stone. It's fine. Each one, you're not limited to that. That was originally going to be the case, but it felt too gimpy to do that. Instead, any divine stone, which is what they call them now, any divine stone, you can absorb with any god. So, yeah, works great. So if you're concerned about that, if you have a lot of Pantheon, like, will Ragnarok really fit in? It'll fit in just fine. So, yeah, in fact, I hope, and I suspect they probably will. I would love a campaign where you use both. I think that'd be awesome. And I imagine that'll be the case if nothing else, if this is popular enough, I guarantee they're going to do it. So, and if not that, they're really good at community support and the community will do it for us. And then we'll still be able to even play through a campaign. Cause they actually have, one-offs like what I played, but then they also have like scenario campaigns where it's like 3 missions in a row and you can build up your army or get different gear or, whatever it might be. You can kind of keep track of who won which version and then they start different or, things can change. Typical campaign stuff. It's pretty cool. All right, so blanket statement after all that said, the army building is fantastic. It is actually my second favorite army builder ever. Debatably my first. It's kind of hard. Limbo Eternal War I like because you get to pick a lot of equipment and special ability cards and your divinity, and your units. All of that together, and there's a lot of cohesive unit when you build units together, like the units go together, like they're from the same kind of area, so they all work together, where like, if this unit will react if this unit has something, right? And you don't really get necessarily that, overt in Mythic Battles Pantheon, but Mythic Battles, has a ton of options and a lot of uniqueness in their units that even Limbo kind of lacks a little bit. So, it's debatable. It's right up there. Literally, fantastic army building. Even picking based off of your recruitment points and based off the strategic level of how many Art of War cards you have. My last build, I actually had 2 points left over, and I purposely didn't get another unit, so I got more Art of War cards, because the units I had picked weren't giving me a lot of strategic value, which is that Art of War card. Essentially, each time you recruit somebody, you see how many recruitment points they have, you see how many times they can activate, how many cards you're going to get, and then over here, there's strategic value, how many Art of War cards you're going to get, because by recruiting them, you get more. So for Gulavig, or I can't pronounce her name, you get 2, which is great. I mean, that's awesome to get 2. Whereas if you get a Jotun, you spend 2 and you get none, right? So it just kind of, I don't know, there's a lot to it. There's a lot to it on, who you want to do, especially like, for instance, the Oathbreaker. So the army I built last was a recovery unit. Essentially, everybody could heal or heal somebody else, right? And in fact, I had For instance, I had the Oathbreakers here, where +1 Oathbreaker if the troop is not complete at the end of its activation phase. So every time you activate it, if it's down any of the 5, one pops up, you get an extra one, right? It's healing itself. But you can combine that with, let's say, Eric Bloodaxe, right? And so you can do this unit attachment. This unit may gain +2. So this is now a 1 recruitment point unit that's rolling a 3, 4, 5. That's amazing. That's actually really good for a 5/4 with 2 movement. But it suffers 1 automatic wound at the end of its unit activation. But if you have a healer, it doesn't matter if it gets hurt at the end, right? In fact, I had Hell, and so even if it wasn't their turn, I can have her heal them. And so there were now 7 cards, 7 activations where they could be healed. And so the +2 damage was always there. I mean, there are some really cool kind of situations and builds you can do. If you just want to go in here and be like, I just want fast moving guys, you can do that. If you just want guys that change the terrain or use the terrain, you can do that. If you just want a group of tough dudes, you can do that. And the interactions between them all is so cool. This is another positive for me, is the nuance between game mechanics. So if you don't know, I like simple games, and this is a simple game in that I could explain how to play this game in a few minutes. It's not hard. You play the card, you do 1 to 2 activations, or 1 to 2 activations, and then each of those activations do 1 to 2 actions. When you attack, you roll dice, and then any 5s you get to re-roll, you get to discard any to increase the value by 1, so that you have to break their defense. Or if their defense is 8, then you need a 5 and then a 3, and then you have got an 8, right? And so that like it's really that simple. And then you go until you either get 4 of these or you kill the other god. That's it. There you go. You know how to play the game. There's more to it than that, obviously, but the nuance comes from these combinations. So, like, for instance, you have these shield maidens here, and they have Mighty Throw, and they also have Initiative. And what Initiative means is that they can retaliate. Essentially, if you're attacked, you can play one of your card and retaliate back. But they get to retaliate before the first attack. So let's say this chick here wants to attack them. You can play that card and say, I'm retaliating beforehand. Now, the Mighty Throw allows them to throw a unit with blinks. So they could actually throw a unit with a blink, and if they're now farther away and they're out of range, they don't get to attack you. So they declared an attack, never got to do it, and in fact, they're out of range now. It's awesome. In fact, you can double down on that, and there's a troop card in here. Yeah, right here, Hervor or whatever. They get +2 when retaliating. You throw this on them, and now suddenly they're rolling even more dice to get even more of those blinks so they can just throw the unit away and be like, you know what, you never even touched me. Instead, I attacked you on your turn. Ha. That kind of interaction between that is super cool. And you could go like super defensive too. You could have, somebody who has close protection, and so if there's other people there, they're really strong. And then you can have them with Force of Nature, where they get +1 offense and +1 defense if they're in an area with terrain. Again, super cool. There's a ton of that kind of uniqueness in there where you can, and then maybe they have bolster too, and so you have these troops that are now stronger in there, or a person with bolster plus leader, which allows you to activate a troop after your activation without using a war card. All of these kind of things just add and compound upon each other, right, to make it something truly strategic and deep. And it's one of those games where you can play easily, but to play well, you really have to give it some thought, even from just recruiting, but then in each and every action, especially when you're just doing 1 to 2 activations and just 1 to 2 actions each. It makes it a lot more like chess in that sense, where it's like you have to think several moves ahead. You're not just going to, I'm going to go there and I'm going to grab that and I'm going to attack you, right? That's already too much. You can't do that in 1 turn, because you can't activate the same unit more than once. They're only doing 2 actions, right? Now, they might have a special that allows them to move and attack or something like that. Pretty rare, but, things can happen where maybe you can teleport somewhere for free. Like, maybe your Freya can do that, right? Once a game, she can just, I'm teleporting over here. There's some nuance there, but for the most part, you really have to think, I need him to be over here, and that means I need to be able to block these guys over there, so I'm going to do that. And you're thinking like several turns ahead at least, especially with what units they have and what units you have and where they're at, what their range is, stuff like that. because you can get stuck somewhere bad, and you don't want that either. So definitely a deep game, a nuanced game, but not a complex game. There's not like a ton of rules you gotta remember or anything like that. So it's really, really nice. And if anything you need to remember is on here, like you're almost never looking into the rulebook, which is, again, really, really nice. All right, now let's talk about combat a little bit, because there's some good and there's some bad. First, I guess a neutral is that there is no defensive role. So you're just being attacked and there's nothing really that you can do. For the most part, there might be some skills. Again, there's a ton of units with a ton of unique skills. There's obviously some stuff in there that you can do, like retaliate ahead of time, right? Something like that. But for the most part, you're just being attacked, right? Some people like that, some people don't. For me, it does tend to go a lot quicker that way, right? But it goes pretty quick either way. And you're still doing 2 rolls, which is kind of surprising. So again, if there's a defense of 8, right, and you're attacking with 5, then you roll. Any blanks, if this was a blank, it goes out, right? And then any 5s you get to re-roll. There's a 4 here. Well, I'll discard that and make that a 5. Here's another, and here's an automatic 5 here, and then this 4 goes away. It's useless. Now I'm doing 5. I need to beat 8, so I'm trying to get 3s. So again, I got a 5 and a 3. That's 2 wounds. I'm done. And you can do that very quickly. I'm explaining it as I'm talking about it, but that's it. I've done my attack. You take 2 wounds, you slide it down, you're good to go. That's it. So combat is nice and swift and fast-paced, and I love that. I don't want a game where I roll this, and then I'm like, okay, here's a star, and here's a cloud, and this is a frowny face. And this one is just purple, but because I'm here, purple now is actually frowny face as well. If I get 2 frowny faces and a star, that's a dark attack against you. But how much defense? You have 7 defense against dark attack. Okay, well, I'm going to actually use an ability. Like, I'm done. That's too much. That I just want to roll dice and hit you. Like, anytime, this is what my main problem with Massive Darkness 1, my very first review I ever pushed on this channel. That was one of my issues, was it took too long to resolve combat. Combat can be cool and interesting, and I love combat mechanics, right? This one has a thing where blanks, they just go away, unless you can have an ability, right? And if you didn't quite get a 5, if you got a 4, and you got a 3 here, well, you can discard that, make that a 5, bam, done. There are mechanics within here, but none of them take a long time. You do them very quickly, within seconds. You can resolve an attack fully end-to-end under 20 seconds, easily, every time. Especially once you can, as long as both people know what's going on, right? Because, what do I need to hit? You have a defense 8, okay. Need 5s. That was a terrible roll. Terrible. Let's say this was a 5 and this was a 5, okay? They're at 8, so I need 3s. Okay, well, I didn't damage anything. Don't mind my rolls, they're bad. But you get what I'm saying, it goes quick, right? I mean, within seconds, it's amazing. I love fast-paced combat. Love it. If I can just roll and be done and kill you, I just want to do that. I don't want to have a puzzle on, okay, well, let's see, my ability here is a +1, so that's really a +1 here, and then afterwards I get to re-roll nah, it's too much. It's just attack and do good. I know I've said it a lot, but it's very key, because that is the whole game flow here, right? Is you're laying down your card. I'm activating them. Then they're gonna move and they're gonna attack. I attacked. I'm done. That's my turn. Maybe I activate a second card. Maybe that's it. But with 1 to 2 actions, and with combat that fast paced, it is fast moving. It's back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. It's really, really good. Now, you saw me roll badly, and that is kind of a negative. And it's always kind of been that way. There's not really I guess they could put more around it, but you do kind of run the risk of doing too much manipulation too, of course. There is a sense of mitigation. So, anytime you have any kind of luck, right, whether it's dice or whether it's a random draw of a card to activate a unit, there is luck involved. Then there is mitigation and manipulation. Mitigation is the avoidance of unwanted result, right? And so if I want to make sure that I hit you, I can move my guy there and then do the buff and then pay the cost to do that. And now I'm rolling 3 more dice, right? That's that mitigation. Happens beforehand. Now, once I roll it and I roll crappy like that, then I need to be able to manipulate that luck. And the manipulation of the luck is a re-roll or a flip or something like that. And the manipulation of dice is almost non-existent. There are a few units that allow, all these blanks are now ones, or maybe you want blanks because you're throwing or whatever. Like, there's a little bit of manipulation, but it's very little. You could have some people get those re-rolls against enemy units and stuff like that. Very, very light on the manipulation. So for the most part, you roll, and if you rolled bad, sucks to be you. Mitigation is more this game here. And with the cards, it's not as bad because you get those Art of War cards, and you're guaranteed at least 3. It's a start in your hand. That being said, you can run a low Art of War card deck or build, but that's your choice. And that allows you to go and actually search your deck for a specific card. I want to activate Loki. Well, I'm going to discard this and I'm going to find Loki. I play Loki, right? That's great. Or you could just draw the next 2, stuff like that. So the cards are actually a lot better managed than that, but the dice lack a lot of manipulation. So if you're prone to bad luck, it can definitely happen. It can happen through the whole game. You can just have kind of a bad game. It is what it is. As a dice lover, I'm okay with that. I accept that. I would probably like maybe a little bit more. It'd almost be nice if an Art of War card allowed you to re-roll even a dice. I don't know. I'd have to play around with the balance, but that would be kind of nice because then it's another decision point on me as well. But then you are doing the thing where you roll and you're, do I want to re-roll this blank? I don't know. I got 200. Like, again, now it's slowed down, right? And so you kind of, I don't know. It's a hard one to do, right? You can't do the discard to get those, and so again, that's kind of there, but you're all blank. There's nothing really you can do about it. So anyway, that's I still count it as a negative because it is to the point where you can have just bad rolls and throw a whole game because of it. Definitely possible. Okay, now I kind of mentioned this several times by now. That's because they're so awesome. These Art of War cards, huge positive. The fact that you get these and you can just go and specifically get a card is awesome. Hugely beneficial. But you know what? Maybe you hope you get that card +1. I could discard this and just get the top 2. And if the top 2 happens to be the one I wanted plus an extra one, well, who am I to argue with that? Right? That's great. That's fantastic. Or you're sitting there and you're like, okay, you always want to be able to do more, right? You're so limited what you can do on a turn. They're like, I want to activate 2 units each time, but if I do that, then I got to pay that extra Art of War card with the unit. It costs extra to activate them now. Or you can use them to activate different abilities, which is fantastic. I want Thor to be able to attack Freya way over there. Well, I discard an Art of War card. There you go. Now you can do it. They work really, really well in that regard. They're just really, really fantastic. If you have a flying unit, there's not in here, but if you do, you can, if somebody goes to melee you, nope, I evade, popped up in the air. Sucks to be you. You can do that. It's certainly possible. It's really, really great to have those Art of War cards, and they're really, really fantastic. These are a pleasure to use pretty much all of the time. They're fantastic. Really, really like them. Okay, let's talk about, another negative. And that's that the game can take a long time. It can go quick, right? You can just go and suck up 4 of these suckers and you're good to go. If that's what the person's allowing you to do or you're able to manage it, bam, you got it, right? Having Loki or somebody like that with a gem collecting can really help with that. But no, it can be really, really quick. It can take a long time too. So in general, you win by either sucking up 4 of these, absorbing those into your deity, or killing the other deity, or any other deity in a multiplayer game. And again, if the deities aren't really fighting, or like if you have a deity with a guard unit on there and they're just constantly guarding and you're constantly doing that and your other guys are there, it can just bog down. It really can, especially if you're locked down and stuff, whether it's block or just doing what you're trying to do and not being able to. So the game length can vary wildly. It can be really fast, it can be decent, and it can be long. The long ones can kind of suck because you feel like you're just throwing yourself against the wall and chipping it away little by little, and you're just seeing who chips first or who gives up first and tries to do something else, right? And because it could just be like, I'm getting that, no, I'm getting that, and then you're just there, right? It is possible, and I've seen it happen. I had it happen with one of my games. One out of the amount that I played is pretty good, but it can happen, right? Where it's just, this game is just not ending. Like, we ain't killing each other. And we ain't getting these gems because I ain't letting you get any more, and you're not letting me get any more. So, that you can get in those situations. It's certainly possible. Maybe I'm just not a good enough player to avoid that. I don't know. But I have it happen. I had it happen in Pantheon. Had it happen in Ragnarok. Just something you gotta keep in mind. It can, there's that extreme, right? It doesn't get too quick. I mean, unless you're playing really badly, you can do that. But otherwise, you're pretty good. Speaking of playing badly, another negative is while it's a great army builder, you can gimp yourself from the very beginning. You could just pick poorly. And it's not that necessarily any unit's bad, but there are combinations that just don't have good synergy or just don't work well. Or, for instance, there are cards with 0 attack. And besides your divinity, you could then recruit everything with 0 attack. And if you're recruiting, a person that just has a god come to them, but then doesn't really do a whole, you can, or maybe they're just really slow and everybody moves 1. Right? It's like, well, you're just gonna kind of chug there. Hopefully, don't stop sucking up all those divinity stones. I'll be there soon. You can run and get 2, but you get what I'm saying, right? Like you can build a bad army too. It is possible to gimp yourself from the get-go. Definitely worth mentioning. If you pick badly in building your army, then when you go in there, or if you draft, you could just get bad luck. You're already at a disadvantage. It's not fair, right? You can definitely have a great army against a bad army. Totally possible. I'd see one more thing I'd like is more variety. Now, I know the scenarios, like the actual kind of campaign stuff, can add a little bit of that, but I would like it even in skirmish mode. Right now, again, you win by sucking up 4 of these, killing the other god. That's it, right? It would be great if there was, some kind of king of the hill or some kind of ball keeper thing where, I carry the the divinity stone and then I get buffed, but then if you knock me out, then you can get it and you have to bring it to a goal kind of thing, or you can do that sort of thing. You could do an escort mission style thing. You could do specific objective points of interest that you can control and you get points per that. There's a lot of other skirmish games that do this kind of stuff. This one does it, but not necessarily in the skirmish mode. The skirmish mode's fairly bare bones in that sense. It's just these divinity stones plus god, and that's pretty much it. I would like to see some more variety there. It'd be great if they were able to add, something interesting like that, right? Like, even if it's just this map, but instead, there's a point here and a point here and a point here, and for 5 rounds, every round you keep it, you get points or some junk like that. Like, there is definitely a possibility to do that. It's just, I didn't really see it in Pantheon. I'm not really seeing it here. You do see that kind of stuff a little bit in the narratives, like campaign kind of stuff, but less so in just straight up skirmish. And I would like to do it in just straight up skirmish too. So there's that. That being said, they do some fantastic stuff with these maps. For instance, this map in particular is really, really cool. Not only does it have a whole bunch of areas you can't go to, which is not always normal, right? So there is some blockages here where you can't get there. And plus the divine areas, right, which are also cool. But this one, actually, I'm going to even show you. I'm going to knock that mini down. But I'll go ahead and show you, just so you see. Right here, it actually has some special stuff there. What that's saying is at the beginning, you take 2 trees, and they take 2 trees, and you're like, this is now a forest area with 2 trees. And then they're going to go and say, you know what, this is kind of a forest area. Or whatever you want. You can do it in your deployment zone. It's whatever you think is beneficial to you. But it's really cool to be able to play this map, and each time the forest areas could change. Additionally, they have really cool setup stuff like they always do. Like, you can set up here and there, but you can also set up here and here and there, right? So you kind of split stuff. And of course, if there's 3 people, then it's maybe here, there, and there, or whatever it might be, right? And then you can even have 4-player split deployment and stuff like that's really cool, because then you have a batch here of units and a batch here of units, and sometimes you can just put 1 unit here and a whole bunch over there. You can do all sorts of stuff that's really interesting. There's a really good map design in this game, just in general. There was a Pantheon as well. It doesn't surprise me that it's great here too, but it is. It's really good. Yeah, so I mean that's really it. It handles 2 players really well. It handles 3 players really well, and it handles 4 players really well. The 4 players you typically want to do 2v2. You can do 4 free for all if you want. It gets a little messy. The 2v2s normally are pretty good, but all of the rules and the wording tend to accommodate allies as well, and so there's not really a lot of questions on how does that work if you're like, so it's pretty good there, and you just kind of zigzag activation, right? So it's me, you, them, you kind of thing, right? No, it's great. I don't really have a lot more to say about this. I could talk, forever, but I think you guys get my point here. Fantastic army building, some wonderful units, definitely unique feel to Ragnarok versus Pantheon, but they work really well together on either map. The maps are wonderful as always. The same good stuff that you've always loved about Pantheon is here in Ragnarok. If you've heard a lot of good things about Pantheon, you want to try it out, and you just want to try Ragnarok, you can do that. I can't wait till they do the Egyptian one, so it's definitely one where there's future support headed as well. I know that's important for me as a consumer. It might be for you to know that this is not a one-off thing. This is already within a series with more planned, so that there's future support there as well. They're definitely not just dumping this and running. There's going to be a long life to this one, I suspect. Yeah, what can I say? I'm excited. I want to get it all because it just adds more to it. And when it comes to army building games, as much as it can take a long time to read through them all, I want as many options as possible so I can make as many cool, unique things as possible. Whether it's a troop heavy army or, all flyers. I mean, heck, why not? Let's do that. Again, whatever you want to do, that's pretty much possible with this game when it comes to the army building and stuff like that, which is really, really good. And of course, the combat is solid, fast-paced action, some nice card play even too. Really, really good stuff. So that's Mythic Battles Ragnarok. That is from Monolith. That'll be on Kickstarter. There will be a link down below. Go ahead and check that out. And thanks for watching my review.